superintendent's not here, but we're going to go anyway.
Coming right back.
We are currently in session, so if we could just continue and have the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As I said, we are currently in session. It's Wednesday, February 26th. Welcome. The first order of business is to approval of the agenda as presented. Is there? Okay. Are there any items that you would like to pull off of the consent agenda? Okay. Then can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda? Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda? All in favor? Can I get a motion to approve the items within the consent agenda as opposed to the agenda itself?
So moved.
All those in favor? Okay, that brings us to.
You're talking, but what are you saying?
I'm not drinking coffee, so. That brings us to our first is audience comments. I believe quick.
My name is Reed Outhouse. I'm a deputy chief from Buchanan Fire Department. We just wanted to reach out to the community. We have a Explorer group that we've had in existence for about 2 years now. We take youth from the community starting at age 14. It's run under the auspices of the Boy Scouts of America. Program's been very successful so far. The members can come and train with the fire department, learn what it's like to experience that career path if they're interested, and they meet and drill with the members of the fire department. So in light of the recent tragedies in our community, we just want to make everybody aware that this is another option available for the kids. And also they meet several times a month, they train, and they have their own meetings, they run their own meetings, they follow procedures just like you are here this evening, and they learn about running an organization as well. We're also here tonight to just let you know real quick, this is Kieran Outhouse. He's just here to let you know that they have a fundraiser going on this weekend, and he'll take it from there.
The fundraiser will be held at our headquarters. It's right down the street. It'll be held at 5 to 8 p.m. on February 28, 2014. There'll be spaghetti, meatballs, salad, garlic bread, dessert, and refreshments. Name the whole menu. Adults are $10. Children under 10 are $5. And seniors 65 and older will be $7. Half the proceeds will be going to us, and the other half will be going to the Fireman's Home, which is a nursing home upstate for the firemen that are aging. We also have a booth there. If you are not aware, the firehouse in Golden's Bridge burned down. So we'll be able to donate some money to them, hopefully. So it'll be February 28, 2014, 5 to 8, as I said previously. Be nice to see the community come out. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for doing this. I think this is wonderful that you guys kids using your time constructive, productively, so much better than so many of the other options that they could be doing. So, and thank you for doing this.
And they've actually been an award-winning group at several parades across the county in Westchester County over the last year. So
Any other audience comments? Okay, that brings us to our committee reports. I don't think that there are too many committees because we were away last week. Are there any items that they would, or snowed out?
yeah, actually we could.
Well, I figured Joe was going to cover that in
He's
the
gonna cover community forum?
I'm sure he is.
Okay.
The
we had-
community, the forum last night.
Sure.
Of course.
We had finance yesterday, and we'll talk about it later.
Well, that's the next is the budget, so. And welcome. We always forget to mention you're here, so welcome. That brings us to our superintendent's report.
Yeah, I will give a couple updates and wrap up spending some time on the forum yesterday. Just a reminder, part of the process of the board approving the current 2013-14 calendar, you also approve the process of how to take away April vacation when we use too many snow days. So unfortunately, we have had far too much snow, which I'm beginning to question global warming. But anyway, as a result, we now will have school on climate change. We now will have school on Friday, April 18th, and Thursday, April 17th. I know Alice and myself have fielded many emails.
No, we're not having school on Good Friday.
Can't be on Good
Oh,
Friday.
the 17th.
Isn't it the 14th?
Just-
17th
The
is
Monday, the
Monday.
20th.
Oh my goodness, which ones?
Monday, the 21st.
The 21st, I forgot.
And Thursday the
Okay,
17th.
the 21st and
No Good Friday.
Go
the 17th. Right.
Thursday the
Friday we
17th.
left alone, I'm sorry.
Thursday the 17th, prior to Easter, and the 21st.
17
Monday
and
after.
21.
Only Thursday and.
17 and 21.
Only Thursday
yes.
and
But not
Easter.
Good Friday.
So I'm glad I mentioned it to make sure we got
Before you
it
send out
correct.
something wrong.
Yes. The other update is around our communications. 2 weeks ago, the board met Andy Chestnut, who's working with us through BOCES on our communications and public relations. If you follow us on Facebook, if you watch our website, you'll notice that we have published a lot of information, a lot of really good student stories, a lot of information about the district, and we've received great feedback. So if you don't like us on Facebook yet, make sure you do. And if you don't get to our homepage often, make sure you do, because there are great stories being published all of the time on our website. We also got together, and Alice and I had a brief conversation yesterday, which hopefully will result in thousands of dollars. We are working with Wheelabrator on writing a grant to enhance our parent outreach under the changes of the Common Core. And Alice and I had a 5-minute discussion about some ideas, and that led to a one-pager, and hopefully that will result in the board at some point approving anywhere between $3,000 and $6,000. What we'd like to do is create mini lessons. We'd like to have our staff create mini lessons on hot-button issues, vocabulary, and new curriculum areas in math and ELA, 2, 3, or 4-minute snapshot videos that we would upload to a district page, so when parents are working with their children at home and they don't understand vocabulary or new concepts or so on and so forth, they can access it online and see a real live HENHUD teacher demonstrate for the child and the parent the concept, and it's almost like an interactive homework help hotline. The feedback we received from our 2 math nights so far is that the parents who attended loved it and wanted more, and this is an opportunity to perhaps provide that for our families. And lastly, last night we had a very well-attended forum regarding prescription drug and drug use in our community. And as I said to open the evening last night, it is not a HENHUD specific issue. It's an issue impacting millions of kids across the country. Whether it's prescription drugs or heroin or marijuana or alcohol, we had a dynamic panel of 7 professionals, including a parent, and also including a medical director on behalf of New York State, that talked about the issue and talked very blatantly about what schools are doing and what families and communities need to do. We asked participants or those that attended for feedback, and that feedback is being calculated and organized by the town of Cortland, and we're going to have a follow-up with regards to what sort of programs and efforts we can plan going forward. It was dynamic, it was informative, it was to the point, and I think people left with an appreciation that this board and this district is not going to bury its head in the sand on these very, very important issues, and that is not an easy thing to do. Not an easy thing to do to put yourselves out there as we did yesterday, to say this is an issue and it takes all of us. And with that, I'll let any board members comment on last night.
We want to thank.
Start on the end.
Well, I found the presentation to be very well run, and it was very informative. I certainly learned some new things. There, of course, were things that most of us know already, that drugs are bad and very difficult to take care of. But I did get some new resources. And I was amazed at how many avenues there are in the community and how many organizations are already set up to help deal with this problem, and I hadn't heard about all of them.
I thought it was highly factual and very pragmatic. You know, it's just kind of matter of fact. This is what's going on, and this is what people are doing. The thing that was the biggest surprise to me was how much prescription drugs in the home are a gateway, and how the police and law enforcement agencies were very blunt that the problem can't be, they can't solve the problem by themselves. That you can't, through police action and activity, stop it. It takes the whole community. It takes families and the community working together. And that was probably the most thing. One of our middle school teachers, Mr. Kelly, got up and asked the question, what does this community want to do going forward? And I think that's the ongoing conversation that we have to have through outside groups like the fire departments and the police and all of our groups. How do we work together to have the conversation about drugs in our community and how to stop kids from getting involved in it? And so that was very useful to me.
I would just like to thank our district staff members, especially the teachers, after having 2-hour grade level meetings, that they stayed and participated in this program. And the administrators that were here, I was so impressed by that and the number of people in the community that actually came out and, you know, gained useful information. I was extremely impressed. I also think it's important, I really never knew how to dispose the correct way of drugs that, you know, you no longer had a need for once you were through with them. And now to find out that there's going to be lock boxes distributed throughout our community, to have a place where, you know, your unused prescriptions can be placed properly, was a very positive thing that I never actually knew. So it was very, very good. Thank you.
Can I just jump in real quick on thanking the staff part? Early on, Claire Carey started the ball rolling, but then Joe and
Linda Puglisi.
Mrs. Puglisi got in onto it, and they said one thing: it's very important how you structure the panel and get the right people on the panel is so important, and that was true last night. So we appreciate the legwork that our staff did.
And also to see so many members of the town board there equally, you
And
know,
Bill.
with right?
So, and again, I'd like to thank the people in Westchester County who actually, the panel that you did pull together that showed, because it was terribly, it was frightening, and it was informative, and it was all those things all rolled into one. You know, it made every parent, even people who think they're immune to it, it can happen anywhere. It can happen here. It can happen no matter what. And there was a father who bravely spoke about having lost his son, and how, you know, how he went from being just a, you know, happy-go-lucky 13-year-old with aspirations to, you know, a 17-year-old who had a habit and who ultimately, you know, lost the battle. And one of the things I think that struck me most is that that they can't do it. You've got law enforcement, and they've got the resources, and they've got the information, but again, it starts with people like you guys, like staying with your kids and being aware of what they're doing, and you know, and the district making the commitment to all the activities, whether it's sports, whether it's extracurricular, whether it's some sort of after-school activity, but being aware of what the kids are doing, and the fact that we have teachers that are willing to keep an eye, like such as Mr. Kelly, who spoke, and the teachers who showed up that want to help, they want to be there for the kids, and that's what's going to save our kids, because when they spoke about how prevalent and how accessible this is, it really, it's you know, and again, it could be anybody. I mean, no, I don't believe any parent is immune. You can say, not my son, not my daughter, but you know what? You know, it's, it doesn't, it could be your next door neighbor, and that's just as terrible. Nobody is immune, and I think, again, the awareness and the focus and realizing that it's everywhere. It's not just our district, it's not, and the Westchester County policemen and the panel made us realize that this is New York State. I mean, we had someone from Albany who spoke about the extent, and the state troopers as well, how broad this issue is. So I very much thank you for doing what you did to pull this together, and Claire Carey for kicking us all in the seat of the
Absolutely.
pants to get it started, which is what Claire does. And I think it was very useful, and I think the most important thing is to realize that it's just the beginning. It's not the end. This wasn't the end of it. I think it's
Yes.
to keep focusing and to know that this is just the beginning, and that this does need to, the focus needs to continue. So thank you.
I think one thing we have to think as community members and parents is not to be afraid of saying something. If you see someone doing something and you know, tell their parents. I had that happen a couple years ago when I had my business, and I saw a young man who was going down that path. I talked to the parents. The parents ended up intervening and getting him out, and they came back to me and said, "Thank you, you saved my son's life." You know what? But I put myself in a position where owning your own business, the kids could say, "Oh, that guy's a rat. He's this and that." You know, I look at it bigger. We have to be able to make those kind of decisions, and at the end of the day, it's about life and death. It's about doing the right thing, not worrying about what someone's going to say about you, about being
Or
a
if
rat
it's
or
gonna
not.
hurt their feelings.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to hurt their feelings. So I think we need, as a community, whether it be the kids seeing their friends doing something wrong, people need to start saying things before it's too late, and not worrying about what the label is going to be put on you. So.
Jazz, do you want to offer something, or would you just like to just stay out of this entirely?
No. It's definitely it's a scary thing that's involved in our community. I know I try to circle myself with people who don't go down that path, but even quote unquote the best kids, everyone is affected by it, and it's important as a community that we bring it to light and not hide it in the shadows, and not try and force it back to keep our reputation or whatever good. It's an issue everywhere, regardless of how masked it is. It's an issue, and it always has been. It would be great if there was a day where it wasn't.
It was interesting as well to see that there were people in the audience who were not from Hen Hud School District. There were people there from Lakeland School District. There were people there from Yorktown School District. So it's not just,
Croton,
Croton, yeah. I mean, it was very interesting, I think, for all of us to see how many people were actually participating and were interested enough to come out from other places to hear this.
Well, the other thing too is there was one parent he was honest enough to admit that he had a child who went through this. And
Well, we did have another
and
parent
that
sitting
was
in
very,
the audience as
It
well.
was very, you got to give him credit, because that can't be easy. They can't, you just have to get past that and realize that, again, you do what's best for your kids, for the community. And while this conversation may not have been easy, it was necessary. So.
And I think parents, that I saw on the way out were just so happy to know that this would be continued. This wasn't the one and only forum we're going to have. So that's another thing.
And Claire updated me in the hallway that she has other plans to get more and more.
You hear that? Has she been in touch yet?
I just had one question. I couldn't attend last night, unfortunately, but I've heard very positive things already. And I remember the statistic, just from watching part of the video, was that 95% of students who are using heavy alcohol or marijuana users by 18 are 95% likely to have a big problem when they're adults, so we can't treat alcohol and marijuana lightly either, and we have to be aware of these early warning signs, students in crisis, or beginning showing signs, whether parents and schools. So we all have to work together, and the question I had was what steps we as a board can take, I think, and we have to, this isn't a question to answer right now, but we have to certainly think about this for the future. We have some policies tonight, and then we also can have some more interventions, certainly.
Actually, that was Dr. Kipnis that made that. Go ahead.
I think we were going to say the same thing. I don't remember who made the comment, but there was a comment made on how important it is to teach kids coping skills when they're young so that they don't turn to alcohol or drugs or anything else to self-medicate their pain in their chest, if they're nervous about meeting people in a party, if they're nervous about talking to girls or boys. So it's important to teach them those social skills and coping mechanisms early on to help prevent kids from turning to alcohol and drugs for those reasons.
Actually,
It's a small piece of the pie, but,
I was going to say something different.
oh, well, go ahead.
We heard different things. The quote that Marion brought up was by Dr. Kipnis, who is from the state board, and he's a physician, and he was talking about brains are not mature until a person is about 26. Your brain chemistry doesn't mature and solidify until you're about 26 or so. And then when young people use, and he was talking about the difference between addiction and physical dependence. And you know, when you're physically dependent, it makes you uncomfortable if you stop using it, but addiction makes you do things, crazy things to get to drugs or to use it. But when a youth before 26 uses things that are addictive heavily, they're much more likely to have like 95% likely to have an addiction after 26. It's much harder to control because it changes their brain chemistry when they're still a teenager. So that was kind of where he was going.
Marion, one of the things we could think about, you know, we have DARE. We have DARE when the kids are in 5th grade, or I believe it's right then. To me, that's too young. It's good to introduce them at that point, but really what we should be looking at is when they're 8th grade, 9th grade, when they're getting into those peer situations, going to parties and doing things, and they're interacting with older siblings or older kids. That's where we need to really have the intervention right there and follow up to DARE, maybe have like a sequel to it. I think you really need, not as a refresher, but you know, now you did this, but now here, this is the reality, and
That
it's a little scared
conversation's
straight kind of
That
things
we
and stuff
had-
like that.
They're having that conversation. That's
Okay.
actually,
They had brought that up
there's a
last
tremendous
night.
amount of, that's coming out of this, whether it's the extension of a DARE program and whether it's, you know,
They
into
brought
the
that
high
up.
school as well, you know, what sort of
Middle school and
interventions,
high
and
school.
making children aware of the resources as well.
Mr.
You said that
Dr.
this,
Kipnis mentioned Smart Moves, Smart Choices program.
well, that's what we were going to say, this is, sorry.
Yeah.
This is all on the website.
Yeah,
So-
I'm scanning the Town of Cortland website, and it's not on there yet, but it will be. It will also, last night's presentation will be on their website.
Is it on Low High as well?
Once it is, we'll get it and post it, and also it's going to,
It's on Low High
it's going to
now.
be on the cable access. And there's a short video on lohud.com along with the article from last night. So for those who couldn't make it, you'll be able to watch the 90-minute
It's
presentation. and
actually worth
Q&A.
watching. So, thank you.
On that note,
I assume that
that's my
the,
report.
everybody's tired. I think we're just,
Sticking to
we
it.
finished Joe's report for
Yes.
us. That brings us to our first presentation, which is the special education budget presentation.
Okay, so we will welcome Jan Yablau, who is our interim director. He has Caroline Almeida with him, and we are going to have a review of our 2014-15 projected special education budget.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Make good choices.
They already have.
I have a feeling they already did.
Absolutely. Or the parents will make sure they do.
Yes.
Take care, boys.
So Jan will walk us through the presentation that you have in front of you, or digitally, and also that's up on the screen, or up on the screen.
Can everybody hear me if I'm not right next to the microphone?
I think they usually want you to.
You
talk.
have to.
Oh,
You
because
have
we're
to
on,
taping.
okay.
Good evening. Caroline and I greatly appreciate the support of the Board of Education and Dr. Hochreiter, Dr. Gottlieb, and Mr. Catalan, especially for supporting our programs and students with special needs. As I'm sure almost everybody knows, our office is charged with addressing the needs of our students if they are referred for special education and if they need evaluations, programming and placement through our various services, primarily through Committee on Special Education, Section 504 accommodations, and also the Committee on Preschool Special Education. So what I'd like to do is share with you some information about our programs. I just want to start by saying a big thank you to our staff and our parents. Our programs could be absolutely nowheres nor our support and the success without the involvement of our parents working directly with our children and our adolescents. So we thank our community for that. On the first slide over here, after the nice opening, we have over here, I don't mean my opening, I mean over here what's presented on the screen, our overview of special education programs. We have 533 students who are combined classified through the Committee on Special Ed, the Section 504 team, and the preschool services. Of that number, 333 students are approximately classified through the CSC, 139 through Section 504 status, 62, but it's a little less than that for the Committee on Preschool Special Education. Of course, numbers fluctuate because it varies depending upon which students are referred to our various committees at which time of the year, what the determination is, and of course, youngsters may or may not be qualified or may move out of the district as well. And some students, of course, move in. Regarding the placements of these students, of these 533, we have 469 who are served in district, which is wonderful. That's the vast majority of our students. A much smaller number are served elsewhere. 15 students are placed in the regional BOCES programs. 26 students are served in other public school systems or non-public schools. 23 students are served in our own ABC classes at Frank G. Lindsay School and the middle school. We'll talk in a few minutes a little bit more about the ABC program as well. Mr. Thompson.
What's the age range for CPSCs?
CPSC technically starts in the year that the child turns 3, so it could be a little bit before 3. It could be 2.5 until the child is eligible for the year that they turn kindergarten age, which is in December.
So about a 3-year.
It's about 2 years, a little over 2 years, and of course, many of the students who are referred to the Committee on Preschool Special Education have already been classified through the county for what's known as early intervention or EI services. And Caroline chairs the CPSC and does it very, very well.
The numbers this year, it appears from previous years, the out-of-district placements has gone down.
It's quite possible. I can certainly verify that.
Caroline, is that accurate? I mean,
Please, come on over.
6 years ago, we had 68 students placed out of district. And because we opened the ABC program, a lot of the kids who were out at the time came back to our program, to our school district for an in-house program. And we still have other kids out of district. And this year, and it does happen every year, we get kids who transfer into our district from other districts, and several of those kids every year are already outside placed. That tends to be a more transient population for some reason. So a lot of times kids will move in already placed in an outside placement, and we oftentimes will continue that placement. And that represents a large number of our out-of-district kids.
with the addition of some of the staff that we brought on last year, the behaviorists, obviously we know that that's working. I mean, that was one of the reasons we brought it on, is to keep more kids, identify their problems, and be able to work with them in district instead of just saying, let's get them outside. So is that part of the decrease as well from last year to this year?
Absolutely. I mean, we just had a meeting tonight before this meeting, and talking with the high school principal, and he shared about one of our students, a special ed student at the high school, who in particular at the beginning of the year had a very rough transition to our high school behaviorally. And with the support of the BCBA and the staff that works with the student, the plan that was put in place for him was very successful, and he has now integrated quite well into our high school, and we plan on maintaining him here.
So basically, the point I'm trying to make is that by us making that investment last year, it's already paying dividends for the district, and it will continue to pay dividends, and will benefit the taxpayers in this community. So that, that's the point I just wanted to make.
Yeah,
3 years.
and I
We made that
appreciate that.
investment 3 years ago.
It's not just about preventing students from needing an outside placement. The kids who need the highest level behavior intervention plans are kids whose behavior interferes with their learning and with the learning of other kids in the classroom. So anytime we have a kid who fits that profile, and we could put in behavioral supports their learning increases and the learning of the other kids in their classroom does. So it's not just about the outside placements and keeping kids in-house. That's an important part of it, but it's also really important for the other kids who struggle with
staff,
behavior.
too.
Yes.
And the behaviors serve students, in fact, who may not yet be classified, but it's a means of intervention district-wide that, in fact, they can provide that type of support before they, in fact, are referred and may not need special education. Thank you. Near the bottom of this slide over here, we have 46 students through the Committee on Special Ed and the Section 504 team who were referred up to this point during the school year. 25 students approximately were referred for the Committee on Preschool Special Education, or CPSE, through this point. Mo? Continuing the overview over here, we have 26 students with special education needs are expected to graduate this June. For students specifically over age 18, and of course we keep in mind that students with special needs can remain in school until age 21 or when the time they graduate, whichever occurs first. So for students over age 18, which is an important aspect of students with special needs through the CSE, of these students, 7 are expected to graduate in June, the other 4 thereafter. Oh.
How many is that of our total special ed, eligible special ed population?
Out of the, you mean graduating?
Yeah,
Well, there are 533 students, I believe, total for CSE and for Section 504 and CPSE.
but which of them are eligible to graduate? You know, so we're graduating 26, how many could graduate? Is that possible to know?
Well, that's a great point, because of the 26 that may not be graduating, or those not graduating at this point, they may need beyond the typical 4 years of high school. Their plans, known as the IEPs, would call for the instruction, and because they may not, in fact, be on a track to earn a Regents diploma or local diploma, they may have a certificate of completion. That's why they may stay beyond the 4 years. Thank you. Our next slide is regarding the nope, one back, Mo, I'm sorry. Thank you. Regarding the ABC program that we just spoke about, and Caroline has done such a great job with this. There are 3 classes currently with approximately 22, 23 students. For the new school year, we're projecting either continuation of the 3 classes with about the same amount of students. However, we are proposing a 4th class. The purpose of that is to serve additional students in that program, some of whom are becoming school age. They are leaving the CPSE services, becoming school age. At this point, Caroline and I are looking directly at the services that they will need when they become school age. There are other students, in fact, that I believe are at BOCES currently that we may be looking at in terms of the opportunity of bringing them back to district. Thus, the proposal for the 4th class, and given the honest success of the 3 classes over here, not only keeping in mind, of course, the cost sometimes about sending students outside of the district, the real need over here is successfully serving our children from our own community and our own programs in our own schools. And as most of you know, that's considered placing students within the least restrictive environment. I don't know, Caroline, did I miss anything, or feel free?
You know, I feel so passionately about this program.
That's why I like to turn.
I won't turn up an opportunity to speak about it, so thank you. You know, we started out with 2 classrooms, both at Frank G, a K2 classroom and a 3-5. We maintained that for 2 years. When we first opened, we had 5 and 6 students respectively, and by the end of that year, we were at capacity with 8 students in each classroom. In our second year, we surpassed the cap of 8 through variance, and this year, currently, we added it at last year's budget, a 3rd classroom, which is at Blue Mountain Middle School. And I met with the team from ABC, and we looked at the kids coming in to district from preschool. We have 4 identified who will most likely need this program. We have 2 students who are in the program now who have made tremendous gains, and we're looking at moving them, graduating them out of the program and into a less restrictive program. On the other hand, we have 2 students who are already in district who are struggling in their current programs and may need a more restrictive program. And then we have 1 student who's aging out of the program in the middle school. Additionally, last year in the summer, after our budget was set and our 2 classrooms were full, we had 3 students move into district who fit the profile and needed this type of program. But under the state regulations, you can't go over cap before the first day of school. You can't apply for variance before then. So we ended up sending those 3 children out of district. So what we would look to do is open a 4th section, bring those students back in, and also make room for the preschoolers who are coming into district.
So we would have 3 elementary sections and 1 middle school section?
Yes,
Would that also be housed at Frank G?
yes.
Just keep them, because of the
Because they
resources
share,
together.
yep, they
So-
share supports and
That's what I figured.
Yeah.
Speech therapy.
I would just like to say on record too, I think we all totally appreciate all of the efforts being made by, you know, the wonderful teachers that we have working in these programs and our behavior specialists that was hired, that have made this program so successful, because I'm sure parents are so overjoyed to have their children, you know, back in a home school where they can have friends and, you know, just be integrated in a community, a school community, you know, that friendships can develop and they can be successful. So thank you.
It's truly made all the difference for the kids and their families.
Oh,
And I want to thank you, Barbara. It's our staff, but it's not just the staff in the program that's wonderful. It's the staff at Blue Mountain and the staff at Frank G and the principal at Frank G and the principal at Blue Mountain
Absolutely.
and the board who has supported this program. We made a commitment 3 years ago when we started this program here after a couple of years of research and getting ready for it. And I hear nothing but thanks and joy from the parents that we have this program for their children. And I know it's a big commitment on the part of the district because we're talking about serving a small number of kids. When you have a classroom with 8 students and you need 3 or 4 staff members to service them, it is a big commitment. But if we don't have a 4th section, these kids still need this program. We are obligated to send them to a program outside of district, which actually costs more money than if we open a 4th section here.
Well, there's, you don't have to convince us.
Yeah.
We're there.
Okay, then I'll sit down now. Thank you.
I think I have to jump in.
You had us at
Caroline,
hello.
thank you.
I have to jump in.
It's just all
No.
around.
When you said, hello, my name is, that,
Jerry
you know.
Maguire.
You should just stay up front,
Right, no.
Okay, so I have to jump in with a shout out, I think is what you say, to the special area teachers at Frank G. Lindsay and Blue Mountain, the art teacher, the music teachers, the PE teachers, who have created programs specific and welcome these kids in such a big way that they need a
But that's what
Speech
that's what I
pathologists and
said initially. I mean, you can have all the most wonderful ideas on paper, but if you don't have the right people
Right.
in there
Exactly.
teaching these children and working with them, you know, you might as well forget about it. So the teachers that are in there and working with these students have made the program successful. And our commitment, everybody's commitment to this program is just imperative, you know, so that's it.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
We'll let you go home fairly early if
Oh,
we just
that's-
stop.
That's okay.
So
We've got time.
strong.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the nice comments. For this slide over here regarding salaries, regarding classroom instruction, teacher salaries and related service are identified as you see over there. For the current school year, the actual 4.1 million, a little more than that. And for projections for next year, a little over 4.2 million. Enrique and I worked on these figures this week, and even earlier today, as well as before the break. On the teacher rates and assistants, we see also over there an increase. Part of it has to do with the proposal to add the 4th class for the ABC program. Mo?
It's a 1-2-2 classroom?
I'm sorry?
It's a 1-2-2 classroom?
It's
or
an 812, yes? Right.
8-1-2?
Yes. Thank you. Over here for administrative salaries, with my office over here for the PPS administration, Caroline and I, the current year, the allocation was $307,800. And for next year, it's a little less, and that has to do with the differentiation of salaries for the prior director compared to us at this point. Right, Enrique?
Salaries for secretaries are as listed over there. Mo? Over here, there's really no change in either column for the categories of other expenses having to do with first equipment, contractual expenses, materials and supplies, and tuition district-wide. Tuition district-wide, as we mentioned before, has to do, as Caroline and I both related, youngsters who are placed beyond over here our schools at Hendrick Hudson into BOCES or non-public schools or other public school systems, or special act schools or state-supported schools for the deaf, and so on. We don't expect an increase with that, and hopefully we can bring some of our students home. We're right now in the process, Caroline and I, chairing multiple meetings for all our students classified, whether it's CSE or Section 504, with our annual review procedure, and we are carefully looking at the student services, where they're being served, working with the families, and see if we can provide them support for next year in a least restrictive setting and maybe coming here instead of out. This over here is a general chart summarizing the items we just went over. Enrique and I spoke about this also, and this has to do more with looking at the current year, the actual, the total at the bottom. As you see over here, a little under 8 million, a little over 8 million for projections for the new school year. Overall percentage change is just 2.2%. My favorite slide. This has to do with income coming into the district. The first two areas, and again, there's a comparison between the current year actual and what the projected is for next year. We receive federal funding through the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or the IDEA. It's in two portions. Section 619 is for preschool only. Section 6, excuse me, I can say that a few times fast. Section 611 is for preschool and school-age youngsters. The allocation this year, which has already been approved, is $557,000 and change. Next year, there will probably be a small increase, but the State Education Department doesn't have the new figures. Lastly, on the bottom, probably very important, is state aid reimbursement for students placed in non-public schools. It is on a one-year delay that the State Education Department provides the direct reimbursement to the districts. That's all 700-plus districts in New York. There were 8 students submitted and approved during the last school year. In the 2012-13 year, the reimbursement, based upon conversations Enrique and I have had, including just the day before yesterday myself with the State Ed Department, is at approximately a reimbursement of about $26,000 each. The reimbursement only on those 8 students, and this is a 10-month school year, is about $206,000 and change. For the current school year, there was a December 1 deadline. I submitted that on time. There were 22 students that the State Education Department received our applications for that. They are approved. They are in writing. We will get reimbursement of approximately $568,000 plus on that for the current year. This does not include reimbursements for the 2-month summer program or 30 school days that we also currently have approval for 16 students. There will be others. We also need to look at students who are placed in high-cost public settings, such as tuition we pay to BOCES or other public districts for our children, that we will also need to submit applications to receive some reimbursement on that. I think that's it for the slides. Questions?
3 children that we weren't able to get the variance for, what was the cost to the district?
They were placed in BOCES, correct? Oh, no, Ardsley. Ardsley. Yeah.
You know, it depends on, some programs bill differently. They'll have a billing scale that includes all services, or they'll give you a cost for tuition, and then based on how much speech you need, whether or not you need an aid, the cost will go up from there. But most of the tuitions range from about $87,000 to about $140,000
Per child.
per child.
So
They're
they
looking at
basically
minimum
bringing those 3
$270.
children back, as you said, is going to cover the teacher and probably the aides and everything else like that. Is there a reason why after September 1st we weren't able to change and get them back sooner? That we have to wait till next year to get the 4th class, that we can
There was one student who we did write the variance for on the first day of school, and it was approved. So we are actually over cap at 9 in our K-1 classroom. The other two students, and especially with students on the autism spectrum, change is very difficult. And once you find a program for a student and commit to the program and place the student there, it's not in the best interest of the student to change him so quickly after he or she starts a program. And you know, while we could write a variance, part of the application for the variance to the state has to say why you couldn't find another placement for the student. And so in good faith, a district can't submit a variance saying that they couldn't find a placement for the child when the child is actually in a placement that's available. So there's legal issues with that.
Hopefully they'll be able to rewrite some of those laws that we don't have to go through this, so we can keep them in district, like you said, in the
Yes.
homeschooling, that we, you know, to me, it's such a technicality that doesn't really make sense.
The student who we wrote the variance for on the first day of school, his program placement fell through the last week of school. So that's why we were able to write the variance for him and bring him back. But you can't write a variance application when there is actually a placement available for the child. So the secret is to have those placements available, you know.
No, I'm just saying, but if we,
Yeah.
but we could have put that into place here and kept them in district with their
Well,
peers
but
and
we
things.
didn't have the teachers, we didn't have the reason.
What I'm saying is that if we didn't have to go through that variance process, that you could have done it later than the date that they outlined. Instead of saying the June 1st cutoff, if you could have went right up there, it would have made more sense that we could have brought on, as we've done in the district when we've had the changing last year when we, out in Furnace Woods with the third grade, I believe it was, where we added another class. We should be able to do that without having any hesitation. If there's a need, we shouldn't have to wait the following
Correct, but
year.
we
I'm
didn't
just saying
have
it's
to
not your
stand
problem,
in.
that's a
No,
state
but
problem.
you know what? I'm in communication with our folks up at State Education Department quite frequently, and I will absolutely share that information with them. It's been their policy, but policies can change.
Yeah.
So I will definitely share that with them. Thank you.
You know, one quick question, Jan.
Sure.
You've been in a lot of different places, and this is your first pass through the HINHUD budgeting process.
Right.
How have you found it to be?
Very easy, primarily because the board is very, I'm not just saying this, quite involved, very supportive, and there's been a lot of open communication. The superintendent and Allison Enrique and I work closely together. We've discussed quite a number of facets of the programs and the needs, as well as the budget. So it's actually worked very well. And for the longest time when I was running things in Ardsley schools, it's very, very different because that system has lots of different special programs. But it's very difficult for any district to start and mount programs, but there's been real success over here. I was in the middle school ABC program for a little while this morning. It was just wonderful, and that's why Caroline and I totally agree on something like that as ability to offer these services in our own home school for our own kids.
Yes.
But I appreciate the question.
Thank you.
And I want to say, I thank you. I'm glad I'm here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have some questions.
How are you?
Thank you for the presentation, and thank you for serving in this district too. We do appreciate it for the year. Now, in the past, we've had a more robust analysis of goals in special education during the budget presentation. And I know it may not be the right time, and you've been here a year, but I would like to ask the board and Mr. Hochreiter to have a presentation in the spring where we can look at goals, look at successes, look at needs, where we did have analysis of classification rates, analysis of, all the not all the students in the program. So I think that's important. And-
Marion, are you asking for something like our end-of-year academic reports?
Well, we had done I pulled some of the old reports. In 2011, for example, to 12, we did have some goals listed.
Mhm.
And we had analysis of comparison of classification rates, comparison of 504 numbers. We had a lot. You can look at the presentation is archived on the website, so you can take a look at it. So I do think it's important to do a full analysis, and I believe we'll have a presentation in April. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're shooting for
Mhm.
April 9th to have Judy Hirschhorn, who worked with BOCES on our special ed program review, come and provide an analysis in terms of a series of recommendations. So that I would suggest it would be a great time to do all things special education
Right.
that night.
And one of my questions is, I certainly, like the rest of the board, I applaud the success of the ABC program. It's a great thing, and we've brought students back, and I've toured the buildings. It looks wonderful. But from what I've seen in my practice working with a lot of people is that I think districts have gotten pretty good and a lot better at serving students with autism. But I see a lot of need for students with emotional disabilities that districts don't know what to do. And it's a crisis in our county and our country.
Can't agree with you more.
And I'd like to see how those students are doing and what we're doing, what kind of programs are we developing, because a lot of students are falling through the cracks. And when I have someone come into my office, I'd much rather the student has autism. I know where they go, I know where the class is, but if they have an emotional disability, it's really hard. So we did have a concepts program a while ago in the high school, and I don't know where that went, or I don't know if you remember the discussions on it. John Duff is doing that. But, I'd love to see more classes for students with emotional disabilities at the high school or middle school level, just, high-functioning students who just need some support. I think that would bring some students back, too, perhaps.
That's a wonderful point.
was
I can tell
John
you
Duff
just
and
from my
Golovkin.
experience. I'm sorry.
Golovkin.
Oh,
It was John Duff and Dennis Golovkin
I
who do
just
the
said-
concepts.
I just said.
John Duff.
Sorry.
You're raising a very good point here. I know when I was, at Ardsley, it's not a war story. It was very challenging and difficult to receive community approval and board approval to start programs for students who are emotionally disabled. We did, and that's why very few districts have those programs. Typically, they're those students who have management and more severe needs that can be served in a local building are typically referred to BOCES, and there's very few districts such as Ardsley, Eastchester, or maybe White Plains that serves youngsters on the emotional level that we're talking about. But it's worth looking into.
Yeah, and if you intervene early, you can get students before they need those services. That.
Can't agree with you
Yeah,
more.
so I think that's something. And there's a program, I mentioned it to Joe. I think it's March 12th.
Yeah.
It's a Westchester County mental health initiative where it's basically it's sort of a glimpse at it's called a protocol on what to do if a student shows early signs. So I think that's really important that we look at that.
Sure.
And then the other question I had, how is we heard a lot about Frank G, and we had a discussion 2 years ago about just whether we have too much, whether it's overrun, too crowded. Do you remember when we moved some of the ICT classes? So is Frank G, is it an even spread between the elementary schools? Is it fair the way it is? Is it allocate? Are resources allocated correctly?
From my observations, it is because since the programs are available, not just the ABC programs, but integrated co-teaching, special class sections across the district, that's really doing quite well. So it seems to me, for the short time I'm here, that there is an equal distribution of this, and students are served hopefully within their home schools, and they're providing a range of services, resource rooms certainly across the village, as well as integrated co-teaching classes. As Caroline and I are now conducting the annual review meetings for all our students, that's something we're looking close at. We're also working closely with the principals on that. John Owens comes to all of our CSE meetings, which we love, and we are directly speaking with the principals in terms of needs for their
Makes a
buildings.
huge
So,
difference.
yes, we do consider that quite a bit.
And the only other, I had one other question. I noticed, which probably is, I think, could be a good thing, but we had an increase in the number of students from 310, I think, in 2012-13, which was 13-14 budget review, up to 332 for CSE, I believe. But do you know what students were students identified more? Do you know what it was?
A figure like that will vary. This is not a
Right.
large increase
No.
per se with this, and that has to do with how many students, just as Caroline mentioned, may move into the district with already an existing IEP and series of evaluations that by federal and state statute, we have to implement that IEP. On other cases, it may be students, in fact, especially at the elementary level, who are referred and need those supports, especially at the times before they move forward in their careers, and also dealing with the issues that they'll need accommodations for the state tests. So there's going to be flux in that and changes each year, but slight increase, that's appropriate. And over the years ahead, we'll probably see more students, in fact, being served even under Section 504 than CSE. That tends to be the trend, especially in North.
I just want to comment on that.
Please.
Because I had the opportunity to go through the records for our students. And one thing that was done differently this year in terms of the way the presentation was put together is the students who were served through CPSE for the year, a couple of those kids were counted twice. because they received CPSE services this year during the summer, and they're classified CSE currently. So if you subtract 46 from 62, that difference is actually a number that you can subtract from the total. So there are some kids who, if I'm explaining it right, they are preschool age in the summer, and they have CPSE IEPs, and then they become school age in September, and they have CSE IEPs. And in the past, when we run the numbers, we run them at a cut point like December 1st. So those kids have not been counted twice. And this year, the numbers were run total CPSE kids for the year, total CSE kids for the year. It was just, a different person ran the report, and
So the 533 overstates it.
it overstates it
And
because
by how many?
the difference between 46 and 62 were
So 16.
16 students.
Okay, that makes,
Yeah. And likewise, there may be, and I think there are 2 or 3 kids who were 504 classified, who shifted to CSE, and likewise 3 or 4 who were CSE students and became declassified CSE and became classified 504. So I would have to tease out the numbers in the computer a little bit more, but some kids were counted twice, and that could account for the difference in that.
Could you update the PowerPoint with those numbers when you get it?
Sure, be happy to.
Because it's gonna go on the
Yeah.
on our website.
Yep, we'll do that.
Actually, my question is, mine's actually probably more, I don't know if it's Enrique maybe. I'm just asking, the salaries, it says it's, the teacher salaries and really, are those, does that include, is that all special ed? Is that, that includes like the, the special, the ABC teachers, it includes the psychologists, the behavioral, I assume. Does it also include the teachers who are, does it include all special ed teachers? Does it include the collaborative class teachers? I mean, how is that organized?
general
In the
education.
ICT, it includes one of the 2 teachers.
So
So
that-
for example, if you have a general ed teacher and a special ed teacher, I'm only counting the special ed teacher.
So that, but that special ed teacher salary is in this
Yes.
number? Okay, so it's just that is included as a special ed,
I'm
their role
including,
as a special ed
yes,
teacher.
I'm including all the special ed teachers, psychologists, social workers, PT, OT, and all the social workers, all the related services.
Okay.
I think we talked about this in finance.
I wasn't in finance.
I know.
No, that's why I'm asking.
The general ed teacher is counted under the building budget.
Okay, no, that's why I was asking about where the special ed was. And where you talk about the other expenses, the tuition for out of district, and it talks about, it's, the number you have is 2,541,000.
Yes.
Then there's a number of 568, so will that offset, so will we be getting like 20% back?
Again, that's part of state aid. So our state aid next year should increase at least by the difference of the 206 and 568.
So
In the
about three
past, yeah, in the past, we never did this slide, but this is part of our state aid. So basically, next year our state aid should go up at least by this amount.
Correct, but wouldn't that then, if that, I guess if you're just, I guess it's a matter of classifying it, but theoretically, wouldn't that, doesn't that show in the tuition line at all? You're not going to offset it at all, you're just gonna
No,
consider it
no,
just state
because
aid, you're
one
not gonna
one is the
allocate it?
budget and the other one
Okay.
is the revenue.
Okay.
Because if you remember, we need to, the community votes for the budget.
No, I'm aware, I just wanted to know if it was reflected at all
No.
in the other expenses,
No.
so it's not directly. Okay. And, I know there was some, perhaps it was discussed in finance also, but the benefits issue, that's, I don't see the benefits for this teachers and the aides and stuff in there, and that's for 60 teachers and,
Oh.
I'm sorry, employees, that's significant.
It definitely is significant, but we have a presentation specifically for benefits, and that's where it comes in. Also, for example, when we looked at the administrative budget, we only talked about salaries. We never talked about benefits because benefits will come in 2 or 3 meetings and will show exactly all the cost of our benefits for the district. If you want, going forward, we can put it as a separate, as a salary plus benefits.
No, I understand, but it's a cost of doing business for
Oh,
special ed. so,
no
I mean,
question about it. And
you
if
know,
that's the case,
It's
I
like
will.
the transportation, it's.
Exactly. Well,
So-
if that's the case, I will even add legal fees. Legal fees are,
There's a
you
lot
know.
of pieces there, yeah.
yeah, but
Well, again, the tuition is, yeah, all these different expenses that go in there are just, okay.
yeah,
Well, that's-
these
no,
are
the benefits are
direct,
what really,
direct
struck me.
costs.
Okay.
Mhm.
But it's an interesting point, Mary Pat and Enrique, because we're bound to follow, we have to report out the way the state education department writes the chart of accounts. And that's so that they can compare all districts across the state and look at it. If we want to do a separate way so that we can track actual costs to a department, wouldn't we have to authorize you to kind of set up another set of accounts so that you could track it that way, or?
Well, actually I do. The way I prepare my budget, I can tell you
it's
by
a matter of
teacher,
sorting.
by program, by everything, the total cost, including benefit salaries, the proportional part of the administrative people. In that sense, for information purposes here, we can do it if you want going forward.
No, like I said, I was, just trying to get a complete picture of the special ed budget, and, that's
Sure.
probably close to $1 million. I mean, if you think
Oh,
of 60
no question
people and-
about it, no
so-
question about it.
Right.
Just imagine, we're talking for teacher salaries, 4.2, add 17% of TRS, add another 7.5% of Social Security, just
Yep.
there. That's what I'm saying. So you add 25%, that's $1 million. More than 25. There you have another $1 million. And then add health insurance. That's what I'm saying. I totally agree with you, but then if we include it here, then we're going to include it also in benefits. So if people start saying, let me add up,
No, correct.
then
And
my
it's
budget,
completely
I'm double
overstated,
counting.
yeah.
That's why, as information, we can tell you, but people that don't come to the meetings and they just go and add the numbers will say, the
Doesn't
numbers
add up.
don't,
You could have put a notation like plus benefits.
On a positive note, though, I would like to thank you very much for the wonderful work that you guys are doing with the ABC program. It truly is a wonderful program, and it's, we did go through and we saw them, and these kids are so engaged and so, they're home. They're home, and that's so wonderful because there's so many benefits. I mean, they're with the kids that, some are struggle more than others, but they still have outside activities, whether it's Little League and and basketball and stuff, that some of them manage to, and they're with their friends, and that's huge. That's
Benefit
huge.
of having them in their
And the
homes.
parents the parents are talking, they don't feel isolated because their next door neighbor, their child goes to the same school, and that's a wonderful thing. So, thank you, and I think it's a wonderful thing that you're expanding the program to include more children, because if we have the need, it's ridiculous to send them away. So, thank you. Anybody else?
Just all of our programs, I think, in special education, we should all be thankful for that, so.
Absolutely.
Right on work.
Absolutely. Thank
Important.
you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a good evening.
So,
Thank you.
if you stick around, you can do policies.
Audience comments?
Eyebrows go up on that one.
They're always fun. We can just change it around a little if there's any audience comments? Well, you're the only one. I didn't know. I know you're not here for policies. Can you come up? Thanks. This way, if Carolyn and Jan decide they don't want to stay for policies, they can.
Thank you. I wanted to follow up on the question. I've been in a couple of the presentations over the years, and you asked the same questions that I kind of asked. What's the all-in number, you know, transportation, and every year we hear about the related services, the psychologists and the social workers are added in. And my question is, aren't those psychologists and social workers also providing services at building level, not just for the special ed students?
This is the board up
No, I know, I'm saying, that was my comment. My comment is it muddies, the waters get muddy, because I understand you have the chart of accounts and you have to report a certain way. But I personally have listened to Mary Pat over the last couple of years, ask the same questions I have in my head, and I keep coming back to, yes, there are things not in these numbers, but there are also things in the numbers that
should be out.
probably should be out, and I
Or at
don't know
least
if
a
there's an
percentage.
easy way. You say you track that, but I don't know how you would track how much time a psychologist or the social worker spend.
Oh, no.
Right, exactly, so.
And
And
it's
how
the
many
same
children,
case, it's the
special ed
same
children?
case in transportation. If I have a van sending a special
That's
ed
right.
kid to
You have
Clearview, and
right.
then next door is Hackley,
Right. There's
what
no
should
way
I
to
do?
track that. Right,
How
that's-
can,
That's where the
exactly.
difficulty comes from. So I just wanted to make that comment that I understand you like to see an all-in number, but because of the crossover, because we serve so many different, a large population with one person or one van or one bus, it's very difficult to tease out all those individual numbers. I'd also like to make a comment about Marion's comment about the children with emotional needs. A couple of years ago, when we were, right before we had the last bond, SEPTA came up and asked about children who are at risk in the high school. And we had a number of parents ask us to put together a task force to study why some of the children in the high school were actually struggling and failing. And the district took the role of putting together the task force, which they did. They started the task force, and then somehow along the way, the bond took over the whole thing. And last night's presentation at the forum, where children are at risk and there's drugs, and we know that a lot of children who are failing, who have emotional difficulties in high school, are more prone to and are exposed to drug abuse. I was wondering if the board would consider finding out. I know one of our SEPTA board members had attended a couple of meetings, preliminary meetings, where they were setting up guidelines and questions to be asked and how to go forward. And then after several meetings, like I said, the bond just took over everything, and the focus was just totally lost. So I was hoping that the board would go back and look at that, because I think that is a very serious problem and really does deserve a task force to be put together and look at some of those issues. So I thank you, Marion, for bringing that up.
Helen,
And-
could you send me the information as to who was on? You know, who actually was part of that? And then
I
at least
don't
we
know
can get
who
an
was
idea at
totally
this
on the board. I know, I can get that probably
On the
from the
task
person
force.
who
Okay,
was on
that's
it.
what I'm
Yes,
asking.
I don't know
So-
who was on
We'll
that
dig around.
task force totally,
I'll
but
dig
I can,
around as well.
I'm sure Jim Mackin would know, and I
No,
know
just whatever
Jim Stanko,
historical
who's one of our
information so we can-
co-presidents, was
Yeah, anything
part
you
of
have
that.
that you could share with me.
Mhm.
And
Because
then we'll
I
look
think
from
that
there.
would be a
Right.
great thing to do.
Absolutely, thank you.
And thank you, and I'm glad I was the audience for
Thank you.
tonight. Thank you.
You are.
Leave before we talk policy.
There you go.
But that was actually very huge in our conversations, even as last year, when we were hiring Joe about the mental health, right? And the situations that were going on, and the tragedy in Connecticut, you know, what we're, equally important, I would think, that we
Absolutely.
need to address.
And if you address it early, it doesn't become, you don't need that at district placement.
Right.
You know,
Well, it's like anything.
yeah,
It's like you get
exactly,
it
yeah.
before it becomes a big problem.
Right.
Like, I keep
Alright,
going
thank
back to the CDC study. One of the reports out of it was called Turning Gold into Lead, and it talked about children who had had adverse childhood experiences. And they studied 17,000 middle-class people who had health care, so they're middle class, in San Diego, and they found that people who had had 2 or more, well, put it this way, most people had experienced 1 or more adverse childhood experiences in their life, neglect, different things. But those things, when a person has 2 or more, 3 or more, 4 or more, has very profound adverse effects on kids' learning and on their adult health. And they've been finding that kids who experience many ACEs, they call them, have about a 40 times higher chance of being emotionally or behaviorally disturbed. And so, you know, it's something that we could look at. I've sent things to you, but I'll send them again about the study and about things that schools are doing to become trauma aware and help kids be safe, feel safe in school so they can learn. They talk about the kids who have ACEs, who have problem behaviors, but those people, those kids feel that they are solutions, not problems. To them, they're solutions. They're solving their problem. And so, you know, we have to be aware and set a way for them
I
to.
think it ties in with what Helen was asking
It
for,
is.
so that's, thank you for reminding us. Now on to the fun stuff. The next topic, can't even say it's a straight face.
Thought we were at the amusement park.
There we go.
It's very important.
Our presentation would be our policies. And we had the first readings last week, or last time. And our first policy is policy 5701, overcharging school meals. And I will let you take it, since you
So-
can do it without giggling.
Want me to read it again? Policy 5701, overcharging of school meals.
Move to waive further reading.
Thank you.
Don't you have to read the first sentence?
Nope.
Winter Hudson Board of Education recognizes that on occasion students may forget to bring meal money.
Nice job, go on.
Okay. Moved.
Move to waive further reading.
Okay. Last time we spoke about, well, basically the need for this, because I know that Claire is, and it's not just, again, it's not just here, it's just in general, that these, that, you know, essentially that if you're going to be eating here at school, you actually have to pay for it. So. Carol, if you, I know that we had looked at it, and I don't know if anybody had any
There
changes
were
they
no
wanted to make.
changes or corrections at
My
all
only
last time.
suggestion is, we're not overcharging.
No.
No,
So- Maybe we
It's
should-
the students who are overcharging on their card.
Students are overcharging.
No, but it isn't clear. Maybe we should change the title.
It
It's only-
sounds like.
Oh, you want to change the title?
Yeah.
I don't know. This is
Overdraw.
the-
School meals.
This
No
was the
free lunch.
business
Overcharge.
No free
suggested
lunch.
title. I took it from them.
Overdraw, what you're doing is overdrawing your account. So how do you say that, Enrique? Overdrawing your lunch account.
We could say paying for school meals or failure to pay for school meals.
Not paying for school.
Not paying for school
Failure to
meals.
pay.
For school
You
meals.
know, does anybody else agree that overcharging is
Yeah,
a wrong
even
It
word?
Alice
sounds
said that to
wrong.
me too.
That
Yeah.
it reads as though it's the price as
Right.
opposed to.
That just-
Yeah.
Well, think of a snazzier title next time.
But the content
Student
is.
school meal debt.
Content
Well, I
was-
was gonna say, right on the bottom, it says establishing a meal charge policy. I mean, just.
Maybe meal charge.
Meal
Meal
charge
charge
policy.
policy.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Meal charge policy.
Meal charge policy.
Good. I
Can we
can
vote on it?
read.
Which is why you're president.
There
Madam
you go.
President, thank you.
For this.
We vote to agree with that?
All right, so.
For everything.
There you go.
Resolution.
All right, if we change the title to meal charge policy, are there any other changes? Would people be comfortable with voting on this tonight and
Yes.
approving this? Can I get a motion to approve meal
Excellent.
charge policy 5701? 6 to 1, 6 to 2. Thank you.
You gonna vote?
That was quick.
Did you have a question? You have a, Helen has a.
We'll do that, can we do it at the end? We'll do it all at once?
Is it about this policy?
It's about this policy.
Yeah, okay, then we should have.
We'll do it all at, if you
No,
don't
we
mind,
should-
we've got 2 others, it's, thank
Would
you.
it would affect how it's written?
We can address it at the. Okay, the next is, the next policy is a drug-free workplace, policy number 9117. Carol, are you the author of all of these? Oh, Marion, this is
Oh,
yours?
yes, I'm
Yes.
sorry, Alice, no,
Marion?
Alice just made me laugh. I'm so sorry. I think, did we do a first reading? I wasn't
We
here
did a
last.
first
okay,
reading.
So, I'll start reading. Okay, policy 9117, drug-free workplace. The Board of Education prohibits the illegal or
Move to-
improper or.
Move to waive.
Further reading.
Okay. So essentially, we did have this policy before. Of course, we've always had this policy. We're just articulating it in more detailed.
I think Carson asked that question last week, if we've
Yeah.
already had a policy like
We do
that.
have a policy.
He was under the impression we did not.
We do, no, we have a policy that says no individual may use drugs, or bring drugs, or possess drugs, or think about drugs, in school, so.
Bless you.
Bless you.
You know, they used the word last night, diversion of prescription drugs, which I thought was a good definition in a couple of places. I don't know.
Diversion, what's that? Just use
Diversion
the
means that
context.
We know what it means.
someone
What are you talking about?
uses it in a way that it wasn't prescribed.
Right.
You know, whether you go and steal it, whether you borrow it, where somebody gives it to you. But
Well, then-
diversion was a technical term
Then
that
this
they used.
policy would only be half as long, we wouldn't have as much to read if you just said diversion rather than illegal, improper, unauthorized manufacture, et
We
cetera,
wouldn't
et
want
cetera.
that.
Okay.
And I don't think
I'm
it's
just-
not necessarily clear.
I'm
but-
just-
Kidding.
Just trying to
Yes, I
keep you
think
up on the
Joe's
current lingo.
Joe's point is to spell
Thank
it
you.
out and make it as clear as possible.
Right.
No, so are there any, I mean, well, we understand the reasoning behind it. Are there any changes people would like to make to
No.
this particular policy? Are there any, again, would people be comfortable without any further discussion to approve this tonight?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve drug-free workplace? Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And our third is drug and alcohol abuse, policy number 5312.1. That would be, Mary?
Yeah.
Yes, and this again, we're expanding our existing policy just to, explain, just to lay out, our rules a little bit better. And I think this is not the tract from, the old policy, is it? I printed out what was on our board docs, but we did have a policy as noted with, the no individual may use drugs, but it was very brief, so,
Yeah.
So this is an expanded version, that was recommended by NISBA that just has a lot more detail. And it does note, any staff member observing possession or use of alcohol by students shall report the incident immediately, so anything that has to be reported, which is good. And then I like the, following principles at the bottom. I think it's in line with what our mission is right now in our crisis in our district and community. That, this is preventable and treatable, condition that, of course, it inhibits our district from carrying out its mission. Behavior of the board, administration, and all school staff should model the behavior asked of students. And while the district can and must assume a leadership role, the goal must be accomplished only through coordinated collaborative efforts. So I think those are good,
I think it's all,
principles.
it basically repeats what we heard last night, so I think that's it's quite timely. Does anybody else have any changes or any changes they'd like to make? Mary? Any? Are we satisfied enough to approve it this evening?
Yes.
Can I get a motion to approve drug and alcohol abuse policy number 5312.1? Second?
I thought I.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Well, that brings us to the end of our policies. You have to come up, I'm sorry.
I just had a comment about the overcharging of the school meals, and I can understand the issue involved, but there's been a couple of instances, and I don't know if anyone is aware of them, where some school districts have put in a policy in place, and it's just the way it's handled when the child tries to purchase a meal and they're told they no longer can purchase the hot meal, they have to. I just want to make sure that at the elementary level, and especially when you have children like at Frenchie Lindsay where you have the inclusion classes, that the staff understand a certain way of how to address it and make sure that the child is not traumatized or embarrassed or anything like in that particular instance.
You don't want to
Right.
embarrass them, because this is the parents, this isn't the children.
Right, and I just wanted to bring that, just,
No, I have every confidence that Claire Carey, who's in charge
Oh,
of
yes.
this, will not allow that to happen. That being said, we'll still have the conversation with her to make sure that, she has the conversation with her staff as well, so thank you.
This has already been the informal policy. We're just formalizing
Right,
it,
okay.
basically, so that everybody knows what page we're on and they have something to refer to. But I read that same article where there was that horrible story where
They
the
took it and
kids
threw
were
it
given
out.
the meals and then someone came and actually took the meals away from them and threw them in the trash.
Yeah, I think they
Said,
lost their
"You
job
can't
for
have
it.
this hot meal."
Oh, that's awful. You did lose
Yeah,
your
was that
job.
Colorado, I think it was.
Wrote out in front of her.
It's Arizona.
The one question I had about, can I just ask one question about since we brought up the school deal again. The foundation, about 5 or 10 years ago, had established a fund that was a lunch fund, I think. And it was a way that you could have a fund available if students in need who didn't qualify for free and reduced lunch could apply for it. I think it's a great idea if any of the foundation or the PTA wants to reinvigorate that. I don't think it's around anymore, but I think it was a really nice idea. And people
I
could
think that
contribute
sounds
to
like something that each individual PTA
Yeah,
would want to
PTA, yeah.
maybe get behind.
Yeah.
But that's,
Or
again,
parents.
that's something we can address it,
Yeah.
maybe it can be
Yeah.
discussed perhaps in the PTA meetings that this was an issue, when you have your
No, I
PTA
think the
councils.
council next Friday.
Maybe it's just something you just mentioned.
You know, parents can do that too. You can write a check to Claire and tell her it's for children who need lunches at school. You can just do that as a matter of your own.
Yeah, it's a great.
We used to do that, at the elementary school. There are always a few kids who need.
But we have to be careful. I think it's better to allocate a fund. I'll have to talk to Claire
Yeah.
about it, but with our account, just because you don't want
Yeah.
to you have to really do it as a.
Well, that brings us to the end. Is there any board comments, any new business?
I had one board comment. You probably know this already, but there is good news with the Common Core, that the Board of Regents has approved 19 points of flexibility and giving students now till 2022 to actually have to take the Common Core assessments and make it high stakes. And then there's a support for students with disabilities that's mandated. There's invitations. There's a lot that the Regents voted on to approve, which is really.
Yeah, and I'll jump in. We're working on a parent communication of what this means, because it's important to underscore that what the Regents did not cancel the Common Core
No.
or the state assessments. It's
Yeah.
more of an implementation timeline. So we're
Yeah,
gonna
but it's good, yeah. But
make
they
sure
can
that
do all this
we
if
understand. Families understand what it is and what it isn't.
And
Again, we don't know what we're teaching.
But the review, there is going to be a review of the standards, which is supposed to include parents and stakeholders. So you can write to the Department of Education. I don't know exactly the context.
You take your
I
two.
don't know why I'm still not in
You know, I got one quick one. We got our on board, which is the school board thing, and there's been a lot of consternation about the snow days. And one of the lead stories is that in Massachusetts study done by Harvard shows that snow days don't hinder achievement. What they find is that when schools close, there's enough slack built into the schedule that they can catch up. What hurts kids' achievement is kids who don't attend school when there's a delay or other ways. And so if they don't show up, they miss instruction. But if the school is closed, they figure out ways to make up the instruction. So snow days don't actually hinder achievement. They did a 7-year review of things, so that was quite useful. And by the way,
that article.
Pretty beneficial last year. All right, so then, can I get a motion? Our next meeting will be 2 weeks from tonight on March 12th. Can I get a motion to close? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.